네, 여러분 안녕하십니까? 지금부터 GHIAA 포럼 시작하도록 하겠습니다. H2 및 2023 둘째 날입니다. 우리의 청정 미래 에너지, 전 세계가 주목하고 있는 수소에 관한 이야기 계속해서 이어가 보겠습니다. GHIAA는 수소 중심의 탈탄소 정책을 추진하고 있는 전 세계 수소산업협회가 모여서 발족한 세계 최대 규모의 민간 수소산업 협력 협의체입니다. GHIAA 포럼에서는 민간 부문 국제 협력 강화와 또 글로벌 수소산업 활성화를 위해 애쓰고 있는 각국의 동향에 대해서 들어볼 수 있는 소중한 시간을 마련했습니다. 오늘도 여러분 끝까지 함께해 주시고 경청해 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 본 포럼은 개회사와 축사를 시작으로 기념사진 촬영을 먼저 진행하겠고요. 그 후에는 기조 강연과 또 각국의 수소산업 현황 발표에 대해서 들어보겠습니다. 자, 그럼 지금부터 GHIAA 포럼 시작해 보겠습니다. 먼저 GHIAA 포럼 개최를 위해서 많은 노력과 또 격려를 아끼지 않으신 H2 코리아 문제도 회장님께서 환영사를 전해 주시겠습니다. 무대로 모시겠습니다. 여러분 큰 박수로 환영해 주시기 바랍니다.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to extend my dearest welcome to all the distinguished domestic and international guests who attended the 2023 GHIAA Forum today. And also, I would like to express my special thanks, Director General Eokon, for your attendance. I'm glad to hold this meaningful event so that the GHIAA members can share their experiences and visions on their own hydrogen economy. Ladies and gentlemen, world has entered a new era of implementing action plans based on the vision and strategy for the development of a hydrogen economy. This year, many countries have announced revised plans reflecting technological development and geo-economic changes. Although details of strategies differ, depending on each country's economic circumstances, the central theme revolves around establishing an ecosystem centered on clean hydrogen. Political leaders have been actively involved in executing such plans, showing growing competence and determination for the future of the hydrogen economy. However, more time is needed for hydrogen to be recognized as a mainstream energy sources, replacing fossil fuels. Despite the increased expectations for hydrogen's role in the future energy solutions, soaring energy prices and increasing government's financial deficit resulted from the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine have significantly delayed efforts to promote corporate investment. Nevertheless, various developments are evident in the global hydrogen market. There is a broad acceptance of the necessity for a standardized clean hydrogen certification scheme categorizing hydrogen based on the carbon dioxide emissions. I would point out that G20 summit last week in India supported the acceleration of production, utilization, as well as the development of transparent and resilient global markets for hydrogen produced from zero and low emission technologies by developing voluntary and mutually agreed harmonizing standards, as well as mutually recognized and interoperable certification schemes. This will solve the issue of ambiguously classifying hydrogen according to its color. We are also taking note of a growing acceptance of the role of various hydrogen production technologies, such as blue hydrogen and nuclear hydrogen, and its derivatives, such as clean ammonia, considering some of the main concerns in the early stage of a hydrogen industry. In the meantime, there is growing consensus on the urgency to actively engage and invest in the clean energy transition to decarbonize hard-to-abate sectors utilizing clean hydrogen, including long-haul transport, chemicals, steel, and more. Being fully aware of these issues, the role of a Global Hydrogen Industry Association Alliance is essential and urgent to promote policies to respond to climate change and expand the hydrogen economy. Being constantly aware of these goals and striving to create business opportunities around the world today, all members of the GHIAA will work together and strengthen our collective activities. The first, investment in hydrogen technologies, expansion of appropriate infrastructure, and mobilization of necessary financing through a strengthened partnership between the government and the private sectors are essential. Global cooperation between countries and various entities is vital for its achievement. In order to expedite these actions by the government, the GHIAA will cooperate and collaborate to collect information and share best practices with members through documentation and seminars and strengthen dialogues with the governments. Secondly, as the hydrogen economy aims to overcome the geographical bias of fossil fuels, sharing information and technologies among countries is especially crucial. In this sense, we firmly welcome various programs from the international community to support the hydrogen industry in underdeveloped areas. To ensure the success of these programs and related policies, the GHIAA will strengthen partnership with the international communities and relevant international organizations. Thirdly, we strongly urge governments to accelerate efforts to establish a global hydrogen ecosystem by clearing technical barriers and facilitating international trade of hydrogen. In order to support the government initiatives, the GHIAA will continue to collect and provide relevant information to various individuals and organizations participating in the clean hydrogen movement. Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathering here under the slogan of realizing hydrogen economy through collective actions. I would recollect that Rome was not built in a day. Likewise, hydrogen economy cannot establish in a short time. The global community must work together to realize the hydrogen economy to achieve a carbon neutrality in the future. I hope that this forum will help the GHIAA and participants understand each other and find more business opportunities. Thank you, speakers, participants, and organizers for your contributions. Thank you very much.
네, 고맙습니다. 문제도 회장님께서 지하 포럼의 문을 여는 환영의 말씀 전해주셨습니다. 자, 다음은 축사가 있겠습니다. 산업통상자원부 이호컨 국장님께서 귀한 발걸음 해주셨는데요. 무대로 모시고 축하의 메시지 청해 듣겠습니다. 박수로 맞아주시기 바랍니다.
네, 안녕하십니까. 산업통상자원부 수소경제정책국장 이호컨입니다. 오늘 글로벌 수소산업연합회 포럼 개최를 진심으로 축하합니다. 이 자리 마련을 위해 노력해 주신 HFCHEA 문제도 회장님, 각국 수소협회 대표님들과 참석기업 및 관계자 여러분께 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 현재 전 세계 각국은 탄소 중립을 위한 수소 경제의 중요성을 인식하고 주도권 선점을 위한 경쟁을 펼치고 있습니다. 미국에서는 IRA를 통해서 수소 생산과 투자에 대한 세액 공제를 부여하는 등 대규모 청정 수소 활용을 위한 기반을 다지고 있습니다. EU에서도 리파워 EU를 발표하면서 2030년 수소 소비량 목표를 4배 상향한 바 있습니다. 더불어 전 세계 기업에서도 수소를 미래의 성장 동력으로 보고 대규모 투자를 가속화하고 있습니다. 기존 석유, 가스, 자원개발 회사들은 친환경 에너지원으로 수소를 주목하고 그린 수소, 블루 수소 등 청정 수소 개발을 활발히 추진하고 있고, 자동차, 조선, 철강, 석유화학 회사들도 기존 화석 연료를 수소로 전환하는 노력뿐만 아니라 수소를 새로운 성장 동력으로 육성하고 있습니다. 한국은 이러한 세계적인 추세에서 정부와 기업이 협력해서 수소의 생산, 유통, 활용, 전 주기의 생태계 조성을 추진하고 있습니다. 생산 분야에서는 청정수소의 에너지원을 태양광, 풍력, 원전 등으로 다양화하기 위해 기업들과 수전의 실증 사업을 추진하고 있습니다. 뿐만 아니라 재생에너지 여건이 우수한 호주, 중동, 동남아 등 해외에 대규모 청정수소 생산기지를 구축하기 위해 정부와 공기업, 민간기업들이 협력하고 있습니다. 유통 분야에서는 전 세계에서 생산된 수소가 원활히 공급될 수 있도록 한국 내에 인수시설, 저장시설, 또 수소 액화 플랜트 등 인프라 구축을 추진하고 있고, 한국의 최고 수준의 조선산업 경쟁력을 바탕으로 수소 운반선, 암모니아 운반선 건조도 병행해 나갈 계획입니다. 활용 분야는 수소 모빌리티와 수소 발전을 중심으로 한국이 여러 가지 기술들을 선도하고 있습니다. 오늘 동시에 개최되는 H2 미트 행사장에서 여러 전시품 보셨겠지만 올해 6월 기준으로 한국의 수소차 보급 대수는 약 3만 2천 대이고 수소 충전소는 총 180개소를 보급을 했습니다. 이 숫자는 세계에서 가장 많은 보급 실적이라고 할 수 있습니다. 앞으로는 수소 버스나 트럭과 같은 수소 상용차 보급을 계속해서 확대해 나갈 계획입니다. 아울러서 수소 발전도 수소 연료전지를 비롯해서 수소 터빈, 암모니아 혼소 발전 등으로 그 활용의 폭을 넓혀 나갈 계획입니다. 현재 각국 정부 간에는 국제 수소 연료전지 파트너십 (IPHE) 등의 협의체를 통해서 인증, 교역 등의 수소 협력 활동을 활발히 진행하고 있습니다. 수소 경제를 전 세계적으로 확산시키기 위해서는 이러한 정부 간의 협력도 중요하지만 민간의 협력 채널을 구축하고 정보를 공유할 필요가 있습니다. 이러한 측면에서 글로벌 수소산업연합회는 수소 민간 기업들을 대표하고 있는 수소협회들이 모여서 국제적인 소통을 할 수 있는 매우 중요한 플랫폼으로서 역할을 기대합니다. 기후변화 위기는 인류 모두의 문제이고 수소는 이 문제를 해결하기 위한 중요한 수단입니다. 오늘 글로벌 수소산업연합회 포럼을 통해서 기후변화 대응을 위한 전 세계적인 공조가 한층 더 강화될 수 있기를 기대합니다. 감사합니다.
네, 고맙습니다. 산업통상자원부 이옥헌 국장님 본 포럼의 개최를 축하하는 축사 전해주셨습니다. 탄소 중립을 위한 이 수소경제 활성화를 위한 걸음에 여러분 함께 동참해 주시고 또 마음 모아주시면 감사하겠습니다. 자, 다음은 기념사진 촬영을 진행하겠습니다. 참석자분들께서는 무대 쪽으로 자리를 이동해 주시기 바랍니다. So we're gonna take a group photo. May I invite all our participants on site to come up onto the stage. 네, 현장에 계시는 참석자 여러분들 단체 사진 촬영에 함께해 주시기 바랍니다. May I invite our honored guest to come forward to take a group photo together. 사진 촬영 마무리해도 될까요? 한 번 더 촬영할까요? So, shall we take another photo? Can you please join us? Yes, thank you very much. So shall we do the fighting pose? So with your right hand, please make a fist. Okay. All right, 3, 2, 1, fighting! 네, 고맙습니다. Thank you very much for your participation. You may return to your seat. 네, 지하 포럼을 통해서 오늘도 다양한 인사이트와 경험들 함께 나눌 수 있는 소중한 시간이 되길 바라겠습니다. 이렇게 기념사진 촬영까지 마무리해 보겠습니다. 자, 이제 본격적으로 발표를 시작해 보겠는데요. 발표 가장 첫 번째 순서는 미국 연료전지 수소에너지 협회 프랭크 울락 회장님께서 준비를 해 주셨습니다. 현재 실시간 온라인으로 참여를 하고 계십니다. Hello, President Mr. Frank Wolak. Can you hear my voice?
Can.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and you may start your presentation.
Very good. Well, I want to thank all of the participants at the GHIAA Forum this year, and my apologies for not being able to make the attendance in Korea. But for those of you participating both live and virtually, I trust you will have a good forum. I would like to open up by reminding all of us that in 2021, when we signed the letter of intent, there were only a small group of founding members, and now we can count ourselves over 20 strong with the addition today of Hydrogen Poland. And your addition, Hydrogen Poland, is special to me. While I am a U.S. citizen, my heritage is in Poland, and I'm proud to be a Pole and look forward to building the relationships with your organization as well as all of the GHIAA members. Chairman Moon talked today in his comments about some of the broad industry issues facing us, challenges around the world, the growth of hydrogen, opportunities. I'm going to take time here in this keynote to talk about ourselves as an association of associations and why we are important. Within each of our countries, we bring the connection between our members, the business community, the governmental bodies who bring policy, as well as the communities of stakeholders who have an interest in hydrogen. In each country, there are voices, but associations are uniquely valuable as conveners, facilitators, and advocates. And though each of our countries and regions have differing resources to generate hydrogen and differing plans for use, we all face common challenges. How to scale, what government support makes sense, how do we attract investment, how do we get greener faster, and how do we get communities to accept hydrogen and hydrogen projects? They may be different in each country and each region, but I think all the members participating can count those same types of items as common. There is also interest in what we do. That is evident by our own growth. We are all seeing growth in membership, growth in hydrogen activities in our countries and regions, growth in government attention. So as we enter 2024, we face a growing and challenging landscape where the need for cooperation is evident and the value associations bring is entirely needed. And now you think beyond ourselves as individual associations with our daily challenges of how we we serve our members and how we interface with our own regional and country participants. GHIAA is an association of associations, and our primary mission is to build relationships among ourselves, but also foster private sector cooperation within the hydrogen industry. The ability for each of us to fulfill this mission would be inefficient, if not impossible, without the ability to connect through a network such as provided by GHIAA. But there is more than just an opportunity for an informal network. We share many common members, and as international activities occur, our members look to us to be able to access and gain insight outside of our own associations, and that comes through the relationships that we build among ourselves and some of the formal activities that take place through the organization of the Secretariat. And so we have value in the collective perspective of the association and what we bring among each other, not just individually. And as our members grow, there are also growth in questions. You know, what kinds of standards might apply? What are the best practices of our policies? What successes do we see? What challenges do we foresee? And an association of associations offers a real ability to bridge gaps of knowledge and identify areas where common effort and interaction is necessary. I also want to make a comment here to all of us that GHIAA is unique in hydrogen. There are numerous governmental and technical entities around our globe and resident within our own countries and regions. The IPHE, International Partnership for Hydrogen and Fuel Cells, the International Energy Agency, the Green Hydrogen Organization, ARENA, the Hydrogen Council, and each of our governments has a technical entity or a portion of an energy ministry dedicated to hydrogen. But GHIAA is unique because it was formed to be an association of those groups who are actively seeking to advance the industry of hydrogen and to bridge the private sector and some of the governmental activities, and in so many ways be the interface of the private and public sectors. The landscape for all of us is also changing rapidly. In 2021, every country was simply studying the potential of hydrogen and looking at the ways to develop forward-looking policies. In just 2 short years, we have seen a rapid transformation from concept discussions to action discussions. As I can attest within FCHEA, many of our discussions with governments and our members are less about the likelihood of hydrogen being valuable, but how do we implement? What's needed to move the industry forward? And I trust that many of you are having similar conversations. Our associations are also changing rapidly. We have to adjust to the trend of this concept to action by providing new services to our members, by looking at ways we interact internationally, by building relationships, because our members are multinational. They are not just resident within our countries. They will seek to draw investment into the regions that we call our home associations, but they also will be looking to conduct business outside. And GHIAA and our activities as GHIAA members helps provide a conduit of information among our members that would not otherwise get the information individually within a country. And if you are like FCHEA, you are also going through your own changes. Each of you in your own way has more demand for information, perhaps more diversity of members, new participants in this industry, as well as existing participants and members. There are new questions regarding technical qualifications, codes and standards, definitions of what constitutes a hydrogen quality, what types of technologies can take part in policies, what kind of funding should be directed. And there's an expanded governmental interest, I find, within the United States, where even the United States government, as broad as it is, looks to our association as a means to connect to industry. And I think that likely all of you in the room have similar situations where you are viewed as a repository of great information individually as associations. And I see GHIAA growing and becoming a collective repository of information for all of us. And so lastly, I just simply to draw conclusions, remind all of you who are convening live for the next day or so, you are valuable. GHIAA as a representative body that reflects each of us is unique and valuable. And I think as we look into 2024, we all have the opportunity, in some ways the obligation, to consider the means that GHIAA can grow as an international body and benefit all of us. I will leave with just a minor comment, but I think an important one. As we look to assemble our materials for the 2023 annual report, I ask all of us to be reminded that the document is in fact a global catalog of our industries from the unique vantage point of an association. It's not a government report. It's not a study provided by a consulting organization, but it is what we view as being important in our own regions and our own countries. I find the annual report copy that from last year to be a very valuable resource when people ask me what's going on around the world. And so I ask all of us to put some extra effort into making the next annual report valuable and a valuable resource that helps promote our own activities, but GHIAA itself. Thank you. And Chairman Moon, thank you for the opportunity to make these comments.
Thank you very much, President, for joining us through online. 기조 강연이었습니다. 프랭크 울락 회장님께서 기조 강연 전해주셨는데요. 대전환 준비를 위해서 이 미래 에너지 개발에 대한 중요성 짚어주셨습니다. 자, 이제 지하 회원국들의 각국의 수소 산업 현황을 공유하는 멤버스 프레젠테이션을 시작해 보도록 하겠습니다. 가장 첫 번째 순서는 아르헨티나의 H2AR 컨소시엄의 테크니컬 리더이십니다. 마티아스 카투에노 님께서 Hydrogen Status in Argentina, National H2 Strategy and Project라는 주제로 발표에 수고해 주시겠습니다. 앞쪽으로 모셔보겠습니다. 큰 박수 부탁드립니다.
Hi everyone, my name is Matias Catueño. I'm very happy to be here talking about our national hydrogen strategy and the current developments in our beautiful country. Thanks again for having us. Like I mentioned before, we had a very long flight to be here, but we are very happy. Argentina has a very productive cooperation with Korea, and we are taking a lot of advantage of our time here, so we are very happy. Without further ado, I probably you're not very aware of the current situation of Argentina regarding hydrogen, so I wanted to make a brief introduction. Argentina is not new to hydrogen. We are currently producing and consuming around 400,000 tons of hydrogen per year. It's mostly distributed among the four main industries that consume hydrogen, which is ammonia and fertilizers, steel, methanol, and the petrochemical industry. So you can see that it's fairly spread between all these main industries. And we currently represent around 0.4% of the global consumption. Where is this hydrogen being produced? You can see on the map, it's fairly distributed. We have some major points, for example, on the south of Buenos Aires, which is the blue dot on the coast. We have a large petrochemical site which is currently producing fertilizers, ammonia and urea. And I will mention that project in a bit because it's fairly important. And you can see a very small red dot. I don't know if it's available on the screen, but you can see a very small dot on the bottom, on the south, that it's our green hydrogen production plant called IHFCA, which has been producing green hydrogen from 15 years ago, which they are the pioneers in the region regarding this. It's a very important facility. And how is this hydrogen being produced? It's mostly based on steel methane reforming and autothermal reforming from natural gas, and the rest is for mostly byproduct from the petrochemical union. So I represent the H2R Consortium. We launched this association in October 2020. We are almost 3 years old. We are now more than 60 members, and we are organized in 8 working cells. And our main focus, as many of your organizations, we share a lot of common views. We are struggling to unify the medium long-term view and strategies to develop the hydrogen economy in Argentina. We are promoting pilot projects. We are sharing knowledge with our members who many are companies that are not aware of the potential of hydrogen, or they don't know how they can contribute to the hydrogen economy, but they want to be part. So our role as organization, and we share the common view, is to bring this knowledge to the companies and help them to realize their potential and how can we help them develop and grow these kind of projects. And we've been very active with the local government, trying to bridge the gap between the private and public entities and sharing our knowledge as well in order to develop smarter policies. In that regard, regarding regulation, we have a national hydrogen strategy. This is kind of a breaking news because it was launched just 2 days ago, or 1.5 if we count the time difference. It was developed by an intersectoral roundtable where we had the participation of both the private entities such as ourselves and the public entities such as the local governments and chambers of commerce. So it was a very federal work between all the parties, and it was a work that took quite some time, but we are very happy with the result. We also have a hydrogen law that is currently being discussed in the Congress. It's not yet published, but we expect it to be released after some discussion between all the members. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about this national hydrogen strategy. We have 3 main pillars or foundation based on this hydrogen strategy, which is to promote the local technological and productive development throughout the whole. We also think it's important to contemplate the hydrogen production based on the emissions level rather than the color. We do refer to the colors just as an example, but we think it's important to focus on the certification schemes in order to reduce the emissions. And we are focusing on 2 approaches, both the local market and an export market. Some rough numbers from this strategy. We have a strategy for at least a dual source for producing hydrogen, both from natural gas and carbon capture and from renewable sources. We also contemplate the pink hydrogen from our nuclear energy. And the cost projection, it's we can see that by 2030, we expect to be below the $2 per kilogram for the production cost. This is without subsidies or any assistance. It's just the cost. And as we all know, we see a very strong cost reduction in the following years. Regarding the market volume projection, we see that during this decade, we will be conducting the first small-scale projects, or the first phases of the large-scale projects. And by 2050, we expect to be around in 4 million tons for export market and 1 million tons for domestic markets. These are very conservative numbers. This is not an aggressive projection because it's based on current projects that are being developed and the MOUs that are currently signed with project developers. So we expect that these projections could be revised and increased significantly. And we all know that this is a very early market, so past 5 years, no one really knows what's going to happen. So this is a very conservative approach to this growth of market. And the main focus on the main outputs that we have from this strategy, like I mentioned, we realize a cost below the $2 by 2030. This is 5 million tons by year by 2050, and 4 million tons exclusively for export market. If we took all that production and translated into renewable wind sources, we will be talking about 55 gigawatts of wind power and 30 gigawatts of electrolyzers. This is if we translate everything to wind sources. It won't be necessarily like that, but just to have a broad idea. It's important for the job creation. We expect around 82,000 quality jobs created through these developments. We're developing a certification scheme in order that will be integrated with the rest of the certification schemes that are being internationally conducted in order to integrate ourselves in the hydrogen export market and to certify our level of emissions, whether it's blue or green or pink. We want to certify and demonstrate that we are producing low carbon hydrogen and we can contribute to the climate change fight. We're talking about $90,000 million of investment. It's a very large capital investment that is required. We all know this. And these kind of policies and initiatives are also important to show because everyone knows that we are still a developing country. This is a very large amount of money that needs to be injected in the economy. So the collaboration, the access to fundings and to the low interest rates, the loans are very important, and we need to establish a global cooperation because if we can produce cheap hydrogen, then everyone can benefit from that and move forward for the decarbonization of targets. So it's not that we want to produce it cheaper because everyone is getting a benefit from this. We're also focused to develop local technology. We're currently developing our first alkaline electrolyzers in our R&D facilities, and we want to be part of the technological development. We don't just want to import technology, we want to be key players in this development. And we are focusing this on the development of 5 hydrogen hubs and 2 to 5 hydrogen ports exclusively for export. And just to close my comments and my presentation, I mentioned the Bahía Blanca and that blue dot. We have several projects going around, but I just wanted to show you this one in particular, which I find very interesting. This is a current ammonia production facility, which is operating there. We have an ammonia export port currently operating and exporting around 30,000 and between 20 and 30,000 tons of ammonia. This is currently happening. And this project that we are seeing is to blend green hydrogen from a wind power park, which is located near. We will be blending into the pipeline of the project, and we will be exporting around 30,000 tons of green ammonia by 2026. So this will be one of the first projects in the region actually exporting green ammonia to the potential off-takers. And I believe that this is a very interesting project because it shows how we can take an existing facility and enhance it and make the first steps, the first baby steps into the green hydrogen production in a very efficient and fast way. We need to make very fast moves early and to gain fast traction in order to grow for the next years. this is all from me. Thank you so much for your time and your attention, and happy to discuss anything later. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing the hydrogen status in Argentina and also Argentina's the national hydrogen strategies. 마티아스 카투에노님의 첫 번째 발표 함께 하셨습니다. 자, 바로 다음 연사를 소개해 드리겠는데요. 호주 H2 컨설 제너럴 매니저이십니다. 카테리나 알렉소스카님을 모시고 강연 청해 듣도록 하겠습니다. Now I'd like to invite Ms. Katerina Aleksoska up onto the stage. Please welcome her with a big round of applause.
This one is for next. Hi, thank you. Hi, everyone. So my name's Katerina Aleksoska, and I'm the General Manager International at the Australian Hydrogen Council. Thanks very much for the introduction and for the invitation to present on the hydrogen opportunity in Australia, though I think today I'll be speaking a lot more about the challenges and opportunities. I'd like to start by saying, for those of you who follow Australian politics, you might know that we have a referendum coming up this October, and we're going to vote on whether to formally recognise our Indigenous people in the Australian Constitution. So I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, on whose unceded lands that I live and work, and to pay my respects to Indigenous people across Australia and their unbroken connections to the land and the waters of the beautiful country that I call home. Sorry, I've got a note here to say, you know, the development of the global energy industry has too often come at the expense of land and country, and the connection that Indigenous peoples and all of us have with the earth and the waters and the animals. So the emergence of a renewable energy and hydrogen industry should not replicate the mistakes of the past and of the extractive industries that have come before. The energy transition, where possible, should be a just transition. For those of you unfamiliar with the IHC, we're the peak body for the Australian hydrogen industry, and we represent the emerging hydrogen industry across the value chain. Getting to scale in Australia as well as everywhere else is a big task. It's, I think you've got the wrong slide deck up. Sorry, I don't know who to direct that to, but this isn't the slide deck for today. Did you want me to just continue without the slides, or what's the preference? Do you have a view? Yeah, I sent it. Hi, I did. No, there was that was yesterday's presentation. Sorry, I'm happy to just have a chat, present it without the slides. Yeah, we'll leave the beautiful picture of windmills up on screen for everyone. So yeah, getting to scale for us and for everyone, I think, involved in the industry is a big task. It's a complex ecosystem that we're all trying to build, and it requires, obviously, all of the players in the system acting in tandem. So at the IHC, we've been working over the last 5 or 6 years to try to get the policy settings in place to reduce knowledge gaps and incentivise investment, not just from our public, but also our private players. And internally, as well as with our stakeholders, we kind of use 3 lenses: the economic, regulatory and social licenses to operate as a way to frame the issues. So obviously economic license is where the industry needs to get to scale. So we know, to the comments that our colleagues made today from Colombia, none of our industry is yet commercial, and the investment gap is more than the private sector is willing to fill on its own. We also talk about regulatory license, where the industry is calling out for stable, meaningful and efficient regulatory settings where possible for them to be consistent. Our customers, communities, investors and trading partners will be looking for some degree of that regulatory certainty and consistency. And we also talk a lot about social license, which allows for trusted customer and community relationships. We're looking at a significant energy and economic transition in the coming years and decades, and we need to collectively develop better engagement approaches and communications and information that's fit for purpose for a variety of uses. The issues around energy self-sufficiency and the way that energy is weaponised have obviously come to the fore They affect economies, and national security has been brought into sharp relief following the invasion of Ukraine. And it's reinforced calls from all of our trading partners that we speak to that they're looking to Australia to be that consistent supplier of clean fuels. This is very much the case for countries in our region, including our partners in Korea. As I spoke about yesterday, I think Australia is the land of latent potential for the development of all critical technologies and fuel sources for the energy transition, and indeed minerals, whether that's in the development of massive scale renewable energy generation, or for the development of the value chains for battery storage solutions, or in the industrial scale production of hydrogen and all derivatives. So recently there was a study commissioned in collaboration with Princeton University and the University of Queensland for the Net Zero Australia modelling, and it was released and makes for incredibly sobering reading. I encourage you all to take a look online because it highlights the absolute enormity of the challenge facing Australia, and in terms of replacing our current fossil fuel exports and continuing the prosperity of our country. We have to work incredibly hard to decarbonise our own energy grid, our existing industry, as well as the production of those clean fuels to displace fossil fuels, both for domestic use and for export to those trading partners who are looking further afield for reliable sources of energy to power their own energy and industry transitions. And we know that it's not just about exporting hydrogen and derivatives like ammonia and methanol. We know that whilst the geopolitics of global trade is changing significantly, we're moving away from fossil fuels. No country, however, is likely to move away wholly from its traditional industries, just in chase, because the energy is getting too expensive. The economics of future manufacturing will start to favour countries with lots of low-cost renewables to do some of the processing and manufacturing onshore of those minerals and then export the product. The production and manufacture of green iron and steel, alumina, aluminium and methanol are sectors that can be grown in Australia as export markets in their own right. And I'm going to note here in particular the early mover and quite significant investment or intention of investment that's been made by POSCO for the production of direct reduced iron in the Pilbara region of Western Australia for export back to Korea as it looks to decarbonise its own steel chains. So what's the state of play of hydrogen in Australia? So we're in a bit of a policy flux. We've got some announcements of new policies to increase the rate and pace of renewable energy investments as well as in hydrogen. But it does pale into some insignificance really when we think about the scale of investments made across the region in hydrogen. We've currently only announced around $3.5 billion of dedicated funding to hydrogen, including the $2 billion sort of trial run for hydrogen contracts under our Hydrogen Head Start program. And this year's budget also included a number of additional funding allocations that are tangential or relevant to our sector. That includes around $1.5 billion Australian in planned equity to support construction of common user maritime infrastructure within the Middle Arm Sustainable Development Precinct in Darwin in the Northern Territory. And that has the aim to further develop export opportunities across Northern Australia for commodities such as green hydrogen and our critical minerals. We've allocated around $500 million to investing in enabling infrastructure across the Pilbara in Western Australia. Again, that's to support green minerals. And around $100 million for the Port of Newcastle and the Hunter region in New South Wales to become hydrogen ready. But as I say, the IHFCA and our industry members are very closely watching to see whether there will be a scale up of that ambition and funding as we respond to the challenges of the IRA. In terms of legislation around regulatory progress, the federal government has, for a number of years, possibly for the last 5 or 6, been working on ensuring that our legislation and regulation is ready for industry to provide the use of hydrogen in our gas networks, for example. More broadly, we've been undertaking a legislative mapping exercise with input from the various states and jurisdictions around their own legislation to prepare for hydrogen. We've been working on a guarantee of origin as a means to certify the carbon emissions associated with hydrogen production, which is being tested at the moment. There was around 38 million Australian dollars given to the Clean Energy Regulator to develop the guidelines and certification in tandem and alongside our trading partners for a comprehensive platform that allows for carbon accounting. We've also been making moves on safety regulations, and I'll call out here my jurisdictional colleagues in Queensland in particular for taking the lead on safety. And Standards Australia has led the work on a range of standards with around 8 adopted since 2020 in line with global standards, heavily focused on safety and well informed by technical experts from existing industry and regulators and from our research partners at parties like the Australian Future Fuels Collaborative Research Centre. But we know there's still a long way to go, and we often play catch up, that the new technologies and integrated approaches that businesses are putting forward often outpace the speed of regulatory change, and it puts all of us in a slightly difficult position because we're not as well aligned as we should be. Unfortunately, you can't see my fabulous slide where I've listed all the social licence issues and how they intersect between renewable energy and hydrogen, but there are a few, and I'm sure that some of these are shared across our various jurisdictions. You know, if we look at electricity infrastructure, there's an enormous impact on communities that's coming on communities over the coming years, and that's even before that infrastructure is used for hydrogen, because it's another scale yet again. We're unsure, will we have access to the land that we need to build for the transition and for the ambitious export claims that some of our hydrogen proponents are putting forward? What about domestic hydrogen use? What's the shared infrastructure required? Water in our very dry and beautiful continent is a huge question. There's obviously existing water concerns. We're an agriculture-heavy country, and hydrogen introduces new water concerns and indeed costs. None of the kind of alternative sources of water, whether that's cleaning up grey water or desalination, none of that comes cheap. That's massive and capex intensive. There are already pretty toxic politics, not just in Australia, but globally, around the green versus blue hydrogen question. And in Australia, there's a lot of people who don't believe in CCS, so that makes another difficulty. And then we talk about access and pricing, and that's becoming even harder as people feel the pinch of inflation. And the politics of keeping prices down for essential services is really difficult and can often kill ideas before they've had a chance to rise to the surface, no matter how good they are and how good their engineering is. So by far the largest issue and the key issue in Australia is the question of exports, and at its heart is a question of how Australia can scale up its hydrogen production. And I think of the three issues, water, workforce and land are probably our largest kind of sticking points that are going to be the biggest hurdles for people to get to scale. So if we look at just green hydrogen, and I think everybody knows that green in the long term is absolutely where we need to go. We need to address the renewable electricity required. I've spoken about this yesterday, that we're currently doing about half of what we need to be doing to get to that 16 terawatt hours just on the east coast of Australia. More recently, the modelling from Net Zero Australia, as I mentioned, has found that for an electrified future for the whole of Australia, we need 2050 electricity generation to be about 40 times the electricity generation currently in the national electricity market. So that raises, again, those massive questions. So how big is the land that we're requiring? So the modelling that they've shown is, if you can picture, again, you don't see my slide, if you picture Australia and you think about Tasmania, the little island at the bottom, they are talking about solar arrays the size of Tasmania dedicated across the whole top end to generate that level of electricity that's required, distributed across. Technically, of course, the land is there, but what is not clear is whether we can or should assume that projects will gain access to all of the land that's required. And we need to ensure that our policymakers have got pretty good matrices where they're taking into consideration all the questions, including the various land developments for renewables and for different purposes. And then, of course, if it's blue, where will the carbon be stored? And a whole lot of other questions to resolve. If we talk about workforce, Net Zero again, Net Zero Australia has said that the massive build out in the workforce is probably in the order of 700,000 to 800,000 additional workers for Australia to build out to 2050. That's an extraordinary number. We're not a hugely populated country. Mostly these people would be required to grow the hydrogen exports across Northern Australia. And the number would actually be lower if the hydrogen that's produced was used for domestic use, for example, to process the DRI or minerals. But still, pretty massive. That number only comes down to about 500,000 additional people. And that type of influx of workers into the desert carries its own infrastructure challenge. How do you house those people? You're building entire communities. They're there for the long run. They're building entire brand new energy systems. It's an industrial revolution. Their homes, their hospitals, they'll have kids. where do they go? So it's massive, and it's a desert. How do you attract people to go there? And water, of course. So we did a study. People kept giving us the headline figure for electrolysis, 9 litres per litre of hydrogen, but no one could tell us, what are the differences if we build in North Australia versus South, or what are the impacts on community, or rather of the environmental effects where the electrolyser is situated. So we commissioned a study with ARIP, the engineering group. And they noted that 9 litres was only the volume of pure deionised water that's, when it's put into the electrolyser, can create that 1 kilo of hydrogen. But it's obviously many more litres from source, and cooling can increase those volumes significantly. So when producing green hydrogen in a dry zone, which of course is where we would be doing that in a desert region, the minimum volume of water is probably closer to about 28 litres per kilo. When using evaporative cooling, and when the water is already relatively clean, if it's, say, coming from a river. But it increases to about 76 litres if you're using seawater. So that's obviously not a bad thing. High numbers are not necessarily in and of themselves very bad, but as I mentioned before, if you're not taking that from the environmental flows and competing for agriculture, then you're doing a lot of work and a lot of capital expenditure to try to clean up your water. 76 litres is also no joke. So to conclude, obviously our hydrogen ambitions are significant, but it's still very early days. We're still very much in the price discovery phase, and we're trying to get to that in Australia without a carbon price. So we've kind of cut off one of our arms in trying to get to grow this industry. And we will need those enormous infrastructure projects with long lead times, and as my colleague from Argentina said, eye-watering amounts of investment and reallocation of capital by our banking institutions into these new projects. And the projects will obviously need to be integrated in sensible and politically acceptable ways. We obviously can't do it alone, and we call on our trading partners to invest alongside us, and sometimes to push some of our local politicians to move in the right direction and to help us build the infrastructure and production facilities that we need to supply those clean fuels across the region. We'd love for everybody to be involved. These are all models around the water and human resources and renewables. We want to learn from what you're doing in your own countries and whatever you can share to help us progress our policy agenda and regulatory agenda. But we are starting to end on a hopeful note. We're starting to see terrific improvements in policy and funding, and the change in government has been extraordinary to see, both at a policy level and at community level. There is a great hopefulness in just the momentum that people are feeling in getting to net zero by 2050. And yes, I'll end on that note and say that I'd be very pleased to catch up with everybody after this, and thank you again for the time.
네, 고맙습니다. 호주 청정 에너지에 대한 개발과 투자 또 정책적 움직임에 대해서 발표해 주셨습니다. 카테리나 알렉소스카 제너럴 매니저님의 발표 함께 하셨습니다. 자, 다음은 중국의 IHFCA 시니어 매니저이십니다. 주 웨이님께서 강연에 수고해 주시겠습니다. 박수로 환영해 주시기 바랍니다.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow members of GHIAA, good morning. On behalf of the International Hydrogen Fuel Cell Association, I thank you for the opportunities to stand here. It's an honor to stand before this distinguished assembly. And my topic today, as you can see from the slide, is the demonstration and effective approach to China's fuel cell vehicle development. Before we delve into the specifics of this approach, I'd like to emphasize the critical role that hydrogen plays in our quest for sustainable green climate solutions. But since we are all experts, so I'm going to cut that off. As you can see from the slide, China is embarking on a journey towards a sustainable future. Our vision is very clear: to develop an integrated H2 energy system for the 30-60 decarbonization goal. Now let's, okay, so I'm not turning that, is it? Okay, sorry for that. That's my previous slide. Now let's turn our attention to the dynamic landscape of China's hydrogen energy policies. In recent years, China has undergone a significant transformation, recognizing hydrogen energy as a pivotal pathway for carbon reduction. This profound shift is not merely rhetoric, it's backed by concrete actions. China has issued multiple guidelines and policy directives, each crafted to standardize and accelerate the development of hydrogen energy sector. The signal to the world is that China is not only changing, but actively leading in the pursuit of in a sustainable future. Don't worry about that. I'm going to cover a couple of these policies in my later slides. In March 2020, China marked a significant milestone in its hydrogen energy development with the release of the medium and long-term plan for the development of hydrogen energy industry. This comprehensive plan outscores hydrogen's role in shaping the future of China's energy system. Guided by the principles of innovation and self-reliance, safety and environmental responsibility, this plan seeks to foster dynamic synergy between market forces and government guidance. It prioritizes steady applications and the power of demonstration success, aiming to achieve ambitious medium long-term goals by 2025, such as you can see from the slide, deploying 50,000 fuel cell vehicles, producing 0.1 to 0.2 million tons of renewable hydrogen per year, and reducing CO2 emissions by 1 to 2 million tons annually. Looking further ahead, by 2030, the plan aspires to establish a robust hydrogen innovation ecosystem, a clean hydrogen production and supply system, and actively supports the national goal of reaching carbon peak in 2030. By 2035, the vision extends to an energy system where hydrogen finds diverse applications and increasing renewable hydrogen consumptions for end users. Now, next, in August 2023, China, which is this year, in August this year, China released the groundbreaking guidelines for the construction of the Hydrogen Energy Instruction Standard System, the 2023 edition. The objective of this initiative is clear: to implement China's national hydrogen energy strategies and to standardize the entire hydrogen supply system. The guidelines lay the groundwork for safety, terminology, hydrogen quality, risk management, and emergency response, while also addressing essential standards for green, low-carbon hydrogen production, storage, transportation, refilling stations, and various applications. As we look ahead, these guidelines provide a roadmap for our collective efforts, outlining key domestic and international standardization tasks for the next 3 years. Policy said, now I'm going to cover some demonstration projects that's happening in China or happened in China. China, as one of the world's largest automotive markets, has taken ambitious steps to embrace hydrogen energy and FCV technology and foster its growth. The Beijing, I'm not sure you have watched the Beijing Winter Olympics Games or not. Yeah. The Beijing Winter Olympic Games showcased not only extraordinary athlete achievements, but also display of sustainable innovation. Serving as the world's largest hydrogen demonstration, nearly 1,200 fuel cell vehicles took center stage during the stage, showing the power of hydrogen in decarbonizing our transportation sectors. The remarkable feat led to a collective reduction of 2,200 tons of carbon emissions, and was truly inspiring that 50% of this green hydrogen used at the site were produced from Zhangjiakou, where the demonstration actually occurred. It's a testament to the remarkable synergy between innovation and sustainability. Now, in the dynamic landscape of China's fuel cell vehicle development, we are witnessing an impressive and coordinated effort to usher in a new era of sustainable transportation. In 2021, the collaboration of 5 ministries commissions laid foundation for FCV demonstration city clusters, strategically located in Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei, which is the very southern part of China, and Henan, Shanghai, and Guangdong province, which is the southern part of China. Sorry, Beijing is northern part of China. These clusters pose to become the backbone of our FCV development. With plans in motion, we're now considering to connecting all these clusters together through an hydrogen demonstration highway. Each of these clusters has set ambitious goals with a total deployment of 35,020 FCVs and 511 hydrogen refueling stations by 2025. The Hydrogen for Multi-Sector Application Program launched in 2021, led by the Shandong government, and carried forward through the collective efforts of 4 cities of Shandong, is transforming the Shandong Peninsula region into a beacon of comprehensive hydrogen energy applications. The heart of this endeavor lies in the creation of a replicable model, one that integrates hydrogen into every aspect of our lives. The first direct mental project currently launched in the Hydrogen for Multi-Sector Application Program for the transportation application will complete the construction of 1 hydrogen energy highway, 2 hydrogen zero carbon service areas, 2 hydrogen energy ports, no less than 15 new HRR stations, and the demonstration operation of 3,000 or more FCVs, and achieve hydrogen energy consumption of no less than 20,000 tons, and CO2 emission reduction of no less than 200,000 tons within a 4-year project cycle. The Technology Roadmap 2.0 for energy saving and new energy vehicles, released in September 2020, is a blueprint with emphasis on technical indicators by the industry, including reliability, cost, etc. We have gained a clear vision of the development path across 3 pivotal stages: fuel cell vehicles, stacks and systems, and infrastructure. Okay, now please allow me to introduce a little bit about what we do and who we are. We are the International Hydrogen Fuel Cell Association, just like everybody else. We are an association launched in 2016 by China SAE, Forvia, Sinopec, SAIC, Toyota, Hyundai, Anglo-American, Honda, CHN Energy, Tsinghua University, and other global leading companies and organizations. IHFCA is an international organization with headquarters in Beijing. Now, we were officially established last year, approved by the State Council of China. We are committed to promoting worldwide hydrogen collaboration and FCV rollout and commercialization, and helping to achieve the goal of global carbon neutrality. Now, by the end of August 2023, the number of IHFCA members has reached 88, covering 16 countries and regions, and the entire supply chain. Now I'm going to talk something about what we do. Our business scope can be described with 3 vertical and horizontal dimensions. We do industry and policy studies, standards and regulations, international communications and cooperation in hydrogen fuel cells and fuel cell vehicles. We have established long-term and close collaboration with leading enterprises in the hydrogen energy and fuel cell industry chain. In the past 7 years, IHFCA has undergone research projects on the development of hydrogen fuel cell industries commissioned by the international organizations and the Chinese ministries. We have published industry reports, provided tactical support for the declaration of fuel cell vehicle demonstration city clusters, and we published 6 group standards in the field of hydrogen and fuel cells. And in January 2023, we become a Category A liaison with ISO Hydrogen Technology Technical Committee. Now, from 2016 to 2023, IHFCA has successfully organized 7 international hydrogen and fuel cell vehicle congress and exhibition, we call it FCVC, China's signature event on hydrogen and FCVs. The most recent FCVC 2023 in Shanghai showcased the latest advancement in hydrogen fuel cell passenger vehicles and commercial vehicles, hydrogen production, storage, and transportation equipment, as well as cutting-edge development in fuel cell stack systems, core components, and advanced processing and manufacturing technologies. So while Mr. Jaedo, who is not here, was saying next time maybe we can gather in Shanghai for our next GHIAA meeting, well, the exact date for this has not been set, but we're talking about July again. So hopefully next year we can see you all in Shanghai in July. Okay, in conclusion, the demonstration of an effective approach to China's FCV development shows a holistic strategy that includes infrastructure investment, industry collaboration, policy support, technology innovation, and public awareness. While we have made significant progress, the journey towards widespread FCV is still ongoing. And that's all for my presentation. Thank you. Thanks for Korea to taking the lead in forming such a good alliance. And thank you for attention. I look forward to more productive discussion with you later on. Thank you.
네, IHFCA 시니어 매니저이신 주 웨이님의 발표 들어보셨습니다. 이 베이징 동계 올림픽을 통해서 보여준 이 수소 활용 소개 등 중국의 신재생 에너지 현황에 대해서 공유해 주셨습니다. 자, 다음은 콜롬비아 순서인데요. H2 콜롬비아의 Executive Director이십니다. 모니카 가스카님께서 콜롬비아's Hydrogen Landscape라는 주제로 발표해 주시겠습니다. 큰 박수로 맞아주시기 바랍니다.
Well, hello everyone. For us, it's an honor to be here. I want to start thanking Mr. Moon, H2 Korea, the organizers, because this is a magnificent event, and also for giving us the opportunity to present the advance that Colombia has had in the hydrogen market. My name is Monica Gasca. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the Executive Director of the Hydrogen Association of Colombia. It also makes me really happy to hear all of the countries talking about projects. We have amazing roadmaps and strategy, but now we're talking about getting this done. How are we going to make this a reality in all of our countries? So why is this really important for Colombia? Colombia is a country that exports energy. We have lots of people that are greatly qualified. We have our energy, our exportation matrix here, and what we see is we export energy. Our dream is to export clean energy in the future, and that's why we are here in the Colombian Hydrogen Association. We have a really clear roadmap. We have a law that gives tax incentives to renewable energies. Now we have another law, that is our energy transition law, that gives benefits for the green and blue hydrogen projects. And we have 2 decrees that give political directives to all of the ministers that we need to develop more regulation. We need to develop regulation in the transportation sector, in the agricultural sector, in all of the sectors that are going to be using clean hydrogen from now on. We have a clear message, and this is really important. For Colombia, hydrogen and its derivatives is not just one government. It's a country decision. We have right now a new national development plan that defines white hydrogen. We're now looking at the possibilities for Colombia to develop natural hydrogen. We also defined hydrogen as a public utility, so this is a topic of great importance for our country, and the government is committed to help the projects be developed. We have also the National Energy Plan that establishes goal for 2052. We, in the roadmap, as we're going to see, have goals for 2030, but with this new government, we have now goals for 2052, so this is real commitment. And furthermore, we have the energy transition roadmap that really confirms the importance of hydrogen, especially in two sectors that we're going to see. Also, we have under construction another law, Law 275, which promotes hydrogen ecosystems. What we want is we want to expand the tax benefits that we have for the green and blue hydrogen projects to its derivatives. We want to promote the production of ammonia, methanol, and we want to become an exporter of these two derivatives. Our country has a lot of potential. We started talking about how to use wind and solar produced in the northeast part of the country, but now we're talking about biomass, natural hydrogen, waste, all of the resources that Colombia has to accomplish the goals that we have. So in 2050, we have a study that says Colombia can produce 9 million tons a year of green or white or blue or sustainable low carbon hydrogen. And this will be 4 times our domestic demand. So there is a great and clear potential for exports. Our country also is located in a really beneficial part of the continent. We are really close to all of the routes, the maritime routes of ammonia. So we will be there when we need to export this new energy carrier. What do we have in the roadmap by 2030? We want to produce green hydrogen and blue hydrogen. When we focus on green hydrogen, we want to have between 1 and 3 gigawatts of electrolysis in the country. This is already being developed. That's the great news. And we want to have a price of $1.7 per kilogram. That's the challenge. These numbers were made in 2021, and you know the inflation and all of the things that are happening in the geopolitical sphere of the world. So the challenge is getting to the $1.7 per kilogram. What we are seeing from H2 Colombia is that we can make it, but we need to make efforts, and efforts that are coordinated between different entities, public and private. We also want to have blue hydrogen because we are a country that has natural gas, and that's something that we have to explore. We were talking about with Poland before to export ammonia. We also want to do blue ammonia for exportations. And in demand, we have goals for the 2 sectors that consume most of the energy in the country and also produces most of the carbon emissions in the country, that is transportation and industry. For industry, we want to have 40% of the hydrogen that is consumed in the industry to be low emission hydrogen by 2030. And for transportation, what we want to have by 2030 is between 2,500 and 3,500 vehicles between light and heavy fuel cell vehicles. And we want to have fueling stations between 50 and 100 in all of the country. This is a challenge for us. We are not a country that produces vehicles. We are developing electric vehicles right now, and this is why we see that Korea and why we are here is a strategic partner. We need to get the transfer of knowledge and transfer of technology going so we can accomplish all of these goals. Also for exportation, we want to be a partner with the Asian countries that need hydrogen, that need ammonia, clean always. These are the goals that we have for 2052. As you see, we go from 3 gigawatts in 2030 to 16 gigawatts of green hydrogen in 2052. That means we need to expand our renewable energy projects up until 32 gigawatts. And this is the challenge, and I totally agree with Australia. How are we going to make this a reality? We have a lot of land, we have a lot of resources, but now what we need to accomplish is how to use that land. How do we get these projects to be developed? We also have blue hydrogen goals. This, again, states that we have blue natural gas, so we can produce blue hydrogen. And we have 2 goals in the transport sector, where we focus more on the heavy-duty vehicles and on the exportation of green hydrogen. We also have another new document that is really important. We are developing the Just Energy Transition Roadmap, and this gives 2 clear messages. First, hydrogen is really important for the industry in Colombia. We're going to have a really fast development of clean industrial processes. So we're going to start making blendings between natural gas and hydrogen. And at the end, we're going to have also consumption of hydrogen and exportation. And we also have another highlight, and is that in transport, hydrogen is going to be very important. And we're going to have transport, hydrogen in transport for internal consumption, but also for external maritime consumption. What are we doing from the Hydrogen Association? Well, our work is focused on three main things. First, promoting the policy and regulatory enablers. We need to continue to do regulation. Roadmaps are really nice, and they give a clear message that says, we are interested, we have the potential, we're doing this, but we need to continue developing more regulation. The second is physical infrastructure. If we want to be a hydrogen exporter country, what we need is to develop the ports. We need to know how to transport that hydrogen or that ammonia inside of the country, and we need to do it fast, because our goal says we want to export by 2030, and it's already 2023. And last but not least, human capabilities and international cooperation. As a country that is a developing country, we need to increase cooperation between international countries and with international entities, because we need the aid in terms of financial and technological development. So we are doing these 6 tasks right now from the association. First of all, we're working to enable all of the available sources for production of low-emission hydrogen. Second of all, we're working on the pricing of electricity. How can we get those electricity prices to go low enough to achieve that $1.7 per kilogram that we have as a goal? Third, promote awareness of hydrogen and its derivatives. What we're doing is we're going to the communities, because, and I feel really happy that we are all having similar challenges in all of the countries. We need to get the communities involved in this, because the first thing that they think when they see a hydrogen project is, this is a renewable energy project, and it's not. The scale is really different. We are going to have to build amazing infrastructure and projects that are really big. And another good difference that we have is that we are an industry. We don't let the windmills there producing electricity. We become an industry. For example, for exportation, we become the ammonia industry in the department. So that's a really good benefit. But we need to include these communities. We need to be on the same page with them to get these scale projects developed. We're doing 2 things with the European Union. We're studying the local demand. As I said earlier, demand is a challenge right now. It's a challenge internationally, and locally it's also a challenge, because we are a country that needs competitiveness in all of its industry. And when we talk about hydrogen, low emission hydrogen being 3 or 2 times more expensive than gray, there is a decision to take between being clean or being competitive. So we're studying local demand, and the objective of this study is to create incentives for that demand. How can we leverage on international cooperation to give incentives to our national industry? Also, we're working on structuring the first fund for hydrogen projects. We want to have a place where all of the international community can come and can give us the resources to help us build this ecosystem. Because one thing, and I always say, is when we talk to European countries or Asian countries, you have budgets and you assign several $1 million to promote this. And as a developing country, our scenario is different. We have other needs, and this is not the first need that we have. So we need the international cooperation, and we want to do this first hydrogen fund for scale projects. And last, the infrastructure. We're working with our infrastructure agency in Colombia to develop the port. We want to know which one is going to be the port, or maybe we will have 2. We have the Caribbean and we have the Pacific. So what do we need to do to really develop those ports and get the exportation going? We have in Colombia 5 pilot projects, and I think they're very important, that has helped us understand hydrogen and getting the companies interested in this new topic. But what is more important is that right now we have more than 27 ongoing projects. This is industrial scale. more than 9.9 gigawatts of electrolysis capacity right now being developed in the country. And this is a really good news in refineries, in steel, in ammonia, in methanol. So there is an interest from the industry to develop this. We are going from the paper, because the roadmaps are amazing, to the reality, and that is important. And I'm really happy to see that not only Colombia, but most of the countries here are tackling all of these challenges to get this a reality. So thank you very much. These are the companies that we have in Colombia right now, and we're growing really fast. Anything that you need, please don't hesitate on contacting us, and welcome to Colombia anytime. Thank you.
네, 발표 잘 들었습니다. 이 풍부한 자원을 활용한 이 콜롬비아의 청정 에너지 잠재력에 대해서 알아볼 수 있는 발표였습니다. 자, 다음은 프랑스로 가보겠습니다. 프렌치 하이드로젠 태스크포스의 하이드로젠 지오폴리틱스 리서처이시자 렉처러이십니다. 미카 메레드님께서 France's Hydrogen Strategy and Changing European Market이라는 주제로 발표에 수고해 주시겠습니다. 큰 박수로 맞아주시기 바랍니다.
안녕하세요. 제 이름은 미카입니다. 초대해 주셔서 감사합니다. So, France was one of the first countries in the world to develop a hydrogen strategy. Korea was just after, in 2018, just a few months after. But what matters is that when both of our countries published a hydrogen strategy, there were only 7 countries out there in the world at that time, in 2018, with a hydrogen strategy. Now, guess how many do we have? Yeah, I told you the figure. So I'm a researcher on hydrogen diplomacy and geopolitics and markets, and I run a program in Paris called the Hydrogen Strategy Tracker. And basically, yes, I can tell you that as of September 1st, 2023, we have now 59 countries in the world with a hydrogen strategy. So basically, you can see with just that figure, and I know it's just paperwork, but sometimes, as we've just seen with Colombia, or with China, or with Argentina, well, it's not just paperwork. After all, there's action. So 5 years later, after both of our strategies, the world has definitely changed. If I add all the other countries that are currently researching a hydrogen strategy or really crafting one due to be published in the next year, I need to add 36 new countries to the 59 I've just mentioned before. If I add all of them together, they represent 81% of the world's population, 94% of the world's wealth, as in GDP per annum, and 92% of global CO2 emissions. So as you can see, hydrogen is now reaching a critical mass that no one may be expected to reach so fast. So definitely when France published its first hydrogen plan in 2018, the world was very different. And then when France published its first hydrogen strategy in 2020, the world was slightly different, but from now on, it's totally not the same, because now we're seeing action, as was said before. It's no longer just concepts. So I was hoping to present you the French hydrogen strategy update of 2023, but we're running late. You know, we're French, so we're kind of late sometimes. Well, not when it comes to cooking croissants, right? But when it comes to cooking hydrogen strategies, we may be late. Because our strategy was due to be published in June, then postponed to September, and now postponed to January. Hopefully it will be published at the Hyvolution Summit at the end of January in Paris. But let's just talk about the 2020 strategy to begin with, so that you see the level of ambition that we're starting from, and you can only imagine how ambitious the revamp of that strategy could be come January 2024. So the French 2020 hydrogen strategy nationwide, the main objectives are about to be obsolete, but at the time they were quite ambitious. 6.5 gigawatt of electrolysis capacity by 2030, creating 50 to 150,000 new jobs nationwide, and saving 6 million tons of CO2 per annum. These were the three main objectives of the strategy. All that by orienting investments towards professional mobility, so heavy mobility, heavy industries, and by putting 8.9 billion euros on the table for the 2020-2030 period, which is basically 12 trillion, a bit more than 12 trillion wons. Also, all of our mainland regional governments have their own hydrogen strategies, not just the national one, it's also the 13 regional governments. So, France has a clear approach to hydrogen. Go green or go home. That's the idea. We don't want blue. Of course, French companies are going to develop blue hydrogen because they have assets, they don't want them to be stranded and so on. Okay, got it. But the French government will not fund that. It's either green or it's nuclear. And that's where we start reaching a first key contention point with our German friends within the EU dialogue on hydrogen. Because basically, the French government would like nuclear power from which you derive hydrogen with electrolysis to basically be recognized as green because it's low carbon. And our German friends, but also our Dutch friends, our Swiss friends, even though they're not part of the EU, they're part of the same market, they're saying, no, it's not. It's not green, it's not green. It's low carbon if you want, but it's not green, it can't be recognized as green. So this basically has created some clashes and has pushed back by a certain amount of months, I would say a year and a half to 2 years, the EU taxonomy decision, the EU delegated act decision, and so on and so forth, which has kind of stalled many projects all across Europe, not just in France. But now, habemus delegated actum. We have those delegated acts. We have the taxonomy and the certification mechanism will be put in place by the end of this year. So we're there. And we're leading the way because we've seen that in Korea, in China, and many other places in the world, these countries are kind of, I don't want to say aligning, but at least being inspired by the debates, the interminable debates in the EU regarding additionality, time correlation, geographical zoning, and so on and so forth. And that's good for the climate if you want a just Paris-compatible transition, even in the US. And we need to thank, I don't know if our friends from the US are still there, but here we need to thank Colorado, because without Colorado taking a stance saying we should abide by the same rules as the EU, because they're the ones, those rules, that are just for the climate, maybe the federal government would not be discussing this now. So thank you, Colorado. Another thing, France is also discovering a new nature of its own. What I mean by that is, from a geoeconomic point of view, in Europe, since we have this integrated electricity grid, France was basically at the far western cul-de-sac, at the very end of the electrical grid in Europe. And we were nuclear powered. We had, in the best years, up to 94% of our electricity fully decarbonized with nuclear power and or hydropower. But now things are changing because of hydrogen. Well, our German friends to the north want to import, great. And where in the EU will we develop the most capabilities in, say, solar PV hydrogen, for example? Well, it's going to be the Iberian Peninsula with Portugal and with Spain. And what's in between Portugal, Spain, and Germany? That's us. We're in the middle. And as Frenchmen and women, when we have this little short kind of power, we try to make use of it. And we're trying to bargain, and we've bargained hard. Because in the 2020 strategy, the French government was not pushing for imports. It was not pushing for any kind of transit either within the EU. But now things have changed. France has agreed on a transit pipeline from the Iberian Peninsula all the way to Germany, together with Germany, with Spain, and with Portugal. It's called H2Med. And basically, this infrastructure should be able, by 2030, if it is built as planned, as agreed at least, to carry up to 2 million tons of hydrogen from southwestern Europe to Germany, so by 2030. So things, as you can see here, are changing. Another thing, France, now that it's seeing that its geographical and then geopolitical and then geoeconomic nature is changing because of hydrogen, well, France now is starting to look outward. And what we're trying to do is develop new partnerships with other countries. Our German friends are way ahead of us on that front. In South Korea, you're way ahead of us on that front as well. You have so many bilateral MOUs and partnerships. So what we're trying to do now in France is we're not trying to develop MOUs like what the others are doing. What we're trying to do is to develop a partnership, a proper partnership from government to government, and that takes a specific form. There's 4 countries in the world right now in which you have French experts on hydrogen embedded in the local government at the top level, either in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or in the Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Industry, or Ministry of Environment, to basically provide knowledge, facilitate partnerships, student exchange, and whatnot. So these 4 countries, you know them, and they're part of GHIAA: Australia, Chile, Colombia, and the United Arab Emirates. We also have new projects with Norway, Saudi Arabia, I mentioned Spain, Portugal. So there's a flurry of events, of partnerships, of new announcements, and so on. But to end my speech on the French state, the state of the French market today and this French hydrogen policy, I really would like to draw your attention towards 6 specific game-changing, or at least possibly game-changing, technologies or initiatives. I'm going to be quick, don't worry. I know I only have 10 minutes, and I'm losing time with jokes. So, watch out for these game-changing technologies. The first one is called Hydrocell. I'm not going to name the companies because it's not like an advertisement, but just the technology. Hydrocell, which would be able to enable long-distance, long-duration hydrogen transport at scale, at cost, at local pressure, local temperature, without massive boil-off or toxicity. That could be a game changer. Second one, new membranes for liquefied hydrogen carrier ships, developed by a company that here in Korea you know all too well, because it was the company that unlocked LNG transportation. So basically, they're developing these new membranes, and it's working pretty well. Third, high temperature SOEC, solid oxide electrolyzers, optimized for nuclear power. So here, if you are a country, Korea is one, Japan is another one, but there's plenty of others, like Indonesia as well, that we don't always think about when we think about nuclear energy and nuclear for hydrogen. Then basically this high temperature SOEC with up to 99% efficiency in laboratory definitely could be once again a game changer compared to alkaline or PEM. Finally, power to X to power technology. Here, think Jaedo. In Jaedo, they've just adopted their local hydrogen strategy, right? Just a few weeks ago, talking about developing up to 30 megawatts of electrolysis capacity to service the island on top of the subsea interconnection with mainland Korea. Well, basically, in France, we also have the most efficient technology for power to X to power supply. It's been developed in the French overseas territories, which are basically isolated areas as well that can only rely on themselves if they don't want to import oil and gas. So here, once again, perfectly adapted to islands. If you're Korea, if you're Japan, if you're the Philippines, if you're Indonesia, that's important. And then finally, natural hydrogen. It was just mentioned by my colleagues from Colombia, and not mentioned, but I know she thought about it, by my colleague from Australia. Basically, France is closer than you may think sometimes. So here, closer to Korea than mainland France, you've got New Caledonia. And in New Caledonia, we've got nuclear hydrogen, natural hydrogen that could be developed once again at scale, and which would be much more efficient than other types of blue or gray or whatever kind of hydrogen. So in conclusion, France has plenty to offer, definitely, and is now, I would say, finally, willing to open to the world for new partnerships. And please, let me take just 1 second to welcome, or at least raise up Pierre Buchou. Pierre Buchou is with us in the audience. Please give him a round of applause. Pierre is my colleague from the French Hydrogen Task Force, and he is the General Director of the Highvolution trade show in Paris. And basically, he will be the one welcoming the next General Assembly of GHIAA in January, so that the whole family can come to France, and so that the French men and women realize how deep the connections can be with hydrogen with the rest of the world. Thank you so much for listening to us. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. 미카 머레도 님의 이 프랑스 수소 전력에 관한 발표 들어봤습니다. 고맙습니다. 자, 다음은 신규 가입 국가이죠. 폴란드, 하이드로젠 폴란드 어소시에이션 회원이십니다. 토모호 유메다 님의 폴란드의 수소 산업 현황에 관한 발표 청해 들어보겠습니다. 힘찬 박수 부탁드립니다.
Tessa, look at me. No? Okay. Thank you for invitation. Chairman Moon, it's a great honor to be here. And we met each other in Poland just two months ago, maybe, yes? So it's been pretty quick to be here and to start cooperation with GHIAA and to enter the GHIAA. So it's a great moment for us. So basically, in Poland, our strategy is embedded into EU. So I think almost everything that Mikaa just told, we are sharing exactly the same view. We are taking a part in all the same problems and discussions. So maybe it's very important to declare that yes, we are totally green in terms of which hydrogen we prefer in Poland, and where are our ambitions. Of course, I have to underline one very important thing, that we have these two surfaces of, let's say, approach for the transition. One, the surface is the governmental perspective, what government does, the regulations, everything that's happening on this political level. We have political discussion about whether entire transition have any sense or not. So, but these we leave for politicians. But at the same time, we have the market, and the market transforms in Poland, especially really fast for the certain reasons. So, first of all, we have to understand that in Poland we have very harsh situation with the level of our carbonization of our economy. I'm not speaking about the 75% of coal-firing power generation in our grid, because that's only 17% of our power, of our energy consumption. Yes? Electricity in Poland is only 17% of energy consumption. Electricity and our entire grid is 175 terawatt hours, but on top of that, we have another 170 terawatt hours of heating systems, which are in Poland, let's say, very important part of our economy. So we are already a massive hydrogen producer. We produce 1 million ton of hydrogen, of course, all of it is gray hydrogen right now, but I would like to underline that we do that for 100 years. Yes, our first fertilizer factory plant was established in 1922, and it was, I think, second or the third in the world. And since that time, we have continuous experience in not only hydrogen generation, but first of all, ammonia synthesis, ammonia process, which is very important because until now, no one cared. You know, ammonia. What is ammonia? 3 years ago, 4 years ago, if I would say, we have experience in ammonia, that would be rather funny. Yeah. First of all, what is happening in Poland? We have EU climate policy, but at the same time, 1 year ago, war has started by our eastern border. And you know what? Imagine that on the one day, you cut all of your coal import, which is a very funny story because we were one of the biggest coal producer in the European Union, but in the last 8 years, it turned out that entire coal in our economy comes from Russia. So in the one day after they cut the import of the coal, it came out that there is no coal in Poland at all. Just before winter, and I said 170 terawatt hours of heating with 90% of it supplied by coal. So imagine what we are talking about, because it's not just electricity. We are speaking about the heating, which in Poland in the winters with -15, -20 is a vital commodity. Yes. So war was like the moment of checking the reality. Yes. Cutting the gas supply and now reducing and nearly cutting the oil supplies. And we are still alive. Look, it's still nothing has happened. So it is possible, first of all, to completely change all the import routes, not from Russia. Change it. We are importing from Colombia, of course. We are importing from Indonesia, from everywhere in the world. However, this is another reason why we want to go into green. So, as I said, 60 gigawatts of installed power generation, electricity generation right now in Poland, but and 175 terawatt hours. But I mentioned before the heating itself is also the big part of our energy picture. So to conclude, I would like to say one thing. We have 445 municipalities equipped with centralized heating installations, all of them run by coal. They have to abandon coal not in 10 years, not in 20 years. They have to abandon coal in the next 5 years. So we are speaking about parallel processes of few hundreds of municipalities that will not switch into gas, because we don't have this gas from Russia anymore. Yes, and we're not going to bring such an amount of gas, and we're not going to develop new gas-firing heating plants because it doesn't make sense. What we're going to do, we already started. The first projects already started to decarbonize heating system by hydrogen, produced locally with local renewables, invested by local governments, where the land is organized by the local governments. And this process is now started. First project is already ongoing in the city of Sanok, the southern eastern part of Poland. And yes, right now 32 other cities starting. I think the hundreds of cities will start until 2024. And in 2026, 2027, we will witness dozens of cities that becomes not only green, but also energy independent fully, because these systems are covering entire demand for electricity, heating, but also as a byproduct, hydrogen for the transportation. So I believe this is, today I'm speaking about something that is happening, and it's very hard to present you on the pictures how it looks like, but it's already started, and I believe that on our next meeting, maybe in Paris, I'll be able to present you very, let's say, detailed picture of what's happening and how these, not the strategy, because it's even not strategy, because it's so happening so fast that it's just happening. And now, of course, we have hydrogen strategy, but it doesn't. It was made in 2020, so it's not referring even to the actual situation we have. So right now, I think that this is the one of the most interesting and most dynamic market for this transition, including hydrogen, that we are facing, because we are not speaking about what you would like to do. We are doing because we don't have any other choice right now. Thank you very much.
네, 고맙습니다. 폴란드의 수소 산업 현황에 관한 발표 토모 유메다님께서 들려주셨습니다. 다음은 헝가리인데요. 이 헝가리안 하이드로젠 테크놀로지 어소시에이션 인트로덕션이라는 제목으로 이스트반 lep세니 헝가리안 하이드로젠 테크놀로지 어소시에이션의 회장님께서 발표를 들려주시겠습니다. 큰 박수로 맞아주시기 바랍니다.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'm really honored to be here with you again, and I would say that we met already old friends like Mr. Moon, and it's really getting more and more efficient to speak together. I would like to give you a not too long information about the Hungarian Association, which has not too long passed because we started to deal with the hydrogen in around 19, and we prepared information about the Hungarian hydrogen situation, which was the White Book, and based on this White Book, the Hungarian government adopted the Hungarian hydrogen strategy in 21, and actually we are following this strategy. In last year, we converted our platform to association, and it's quite good that we stand independent and we don't need really a subsidy from the government, gives us a good movement opportunities. In our association, we have approximately 100 members. Half of them are SMEs, but a lot of big companies, the big leading companies from Hungary in oil or energy or transportation. We have a lot of universities and a lot of other activities. So here the association covers all the ecosystem of the hydrogen. The main activities, what we do is basically, as I mentioned, firstly, to help to implement the hydrogen strategy. The most important, or one of the most important part of the hydrogen strategy for us is the GHIAA program. We have the international connection, of course. GHIAA is the first very important connecting point for us, but also we are working in the hydrogen Europe, and we are working with Poland, Tomoho, Zou Wei, and also meeting very frequently. So I think that this international connection, especially in Europe, where we can compare our experiments and share the best practice, it's very important. And of course, we have to work on the regulation, still a lot of to do on the local regulation, and the hydrogen technology brings new knowledge, new technologies, so we have to start the training of the new professional generation in that aspect. And what is absolutely important to have practical projects which are running in the life. The Hungarian hydrogen strategy, as I mentioned, was created in 21, and we have to consider to rework it because since then the life changed substantially. But basically we keep the main targets, which means that we want to have a relatively large production of the green or low carbon hydrogen. Actually, we are producing 200,000 tons per year. I may say already that the majority gray, but we already started the green. And we joined the opinion of France in European Union that we have to consider the low carbon because a relatively big part of our energy source is nuclear, and we will increase the nuclear energy source in the future. Of course, we want to have the renewable, which is mostly solar, but in Hungary we have very good land, very good soil, so it would be pity to use this soil for the soils. Anyhow, we have a plan in the coming years to increase the renewable production to 12 gigawatt nominal value from the actual 5 gigawatt nominal value. And we are planning to increase, of course, the electrolyzers, and we have the very first good result. We have really ambitious target in the mobility. If we are looking about the planned refueling stations or the vehicles, more than 4,000 vehicles in the future. And the hydrogen will play absolutely important role in the household. And we start to blend the hydrogen into the natural gas because we have to use the hydrogen for the household as well. The basic project in the hydrogen strategy are 6 actions. Via these 6 actions, we could reach the numbers that you have seen on the previous slide. Number 1 is the transportation, which means trucks and buses. The number 2 is the different hydrogen valleys we plan, or we already started to implement 2 big hydrogen valleys in Hungary, starting the production of the green hydrogen, and of course it's very important, the carbon capture activity, we call it Blue Hydrogen Project in Hungary. So the big importance for us, as some of you really mentioned as well, that we already started to implement, not in the laboratories, but in industrial measures, all the pilot projects what we have started already with some good results. We started to have the production of green hydrogen, and not only we are using the electrolyzer, but very important how we can store the hydrogen using the cavern what we have from the natural gas sources, how we can mix the hydrogen with the natural gas, what are the limits. We think that we have to start at 2%, but if I'm looking at UK, they are reaching in the future 20%. And we have to establish until the end of this decade, until 2030, 20 fueling stations. And we are at the beginning, but we already have a fueling station. And of course, there are some other interesting development, the parts for the hydrogen system. In the case of mobility, Hungary was always a little bit a home of the buses, back to the past when we have Icarus. And actually, we have 3 bus manufacturers who already developed the buses with fuel cells, and hopefully they will start the production in the coming year. Basically, this year we plan to purchase 40 buses, not from Hungary yet, perhaps Poland. And this year we want to purchase Brouwer hydrogen trains, of course, just to sign the contract and increase the number of the refueling stations. Some other interesting technical projects like the drones, hydrogen power drones, the garbage truck, which is also very interesting for everybody. We have to change the hydrogen from gray to green in the industrial project refineries. We are very much interested in the green ammonia, but most probably we will import it because it's very expensive to produce in Hungary, and some other technical projects. So I think that the most important development that we are not only speaking about the hydrogen, we are not only have the strategy and the paper, but we have a running project where I think that we are very much interested to gain the information, because without COA we cannot move forward in the truck to have green trucks, since Europe is lagging behind in the truck production. I mean the fuel cell power trucks. So I think that the cooperation between our countries, between our association, gives us a practical help and practical movement forward. Thank you very much.
네, 고맙습니다. 수소 모빌리티와 관련된 헝가리의 수소 프로젝트들에 대해서 발표해 주셨습니다. 이스트반 lep세니 회장님이었습니다. 다음은 네덜란드입니다. 더치 하이드로젠 앤 퓨얼셀 어소시에이션의 리뉴어블 에너지 마켓 디벨로퍼이십니다. 피터 브루워님께서 The Netherlands Hydrogen Economy Policies and Industry라는 주제로 발표 들려주시겠습니다. 박수로 환영해 주시기 바랍니다.
Thank you very much for inviting me to speak here. I'm here because our chairman, Arjan van Ginkel, was not able to be here in person. And I already planned to visit the H2Meet exhibition. And because I'm also a board member, he asked me to be here in his place for today. So my name is Peter Brouwer, and I'd like to introduce myself because I'm the first time here at the show. I'm a board member of the Dutch NWBA, and the NWBA is a volunteer organization, and this means that the members all have a job in the industry. And next to it, they are a member of the NWBA, and the members are asked if they want to be also in the board of the NWBA. So my job at Bronkhorst is market developer for renewable energy. And Bronkhorst is a company which produces flow meters, and you can visit us at booth D12 at the exhibition. And as you can see, I'm a little bit Korean because I drive a Korean car, a Hyundai car, which is a hydrogen-powered fuel cell electrical car. So I'm one of the strangers in the Netherlands who drives such a car. There are only 500 to 600 fuel cell electrical cars in the Netherlands. And I think this is because of two reasons. The infrastructure is not ready, and the second is that the current price I pay as end user of a hydrogen fuel cell car is at this moment €20 per kilo. So it is a huge gap between the €20 and the €2 which we want it to be. So the NWBA, the goal of the NWBA is to make the Dutch society more sustainable through the development and application of hydrogen technology and fuel cells. And I think we can add nowadays also, of course, the production of green hydrogen. Our organization has three pillars, as I told you earlier this morning. The first is the government relations. That we join our forces and represent our members together. The second is the human capital agenda. One of the projects we have at the moment is that we realize a young professional network of people working young people working in the industry on hydrogen projects, or even students. And this third pillar is that we want to share knowledge together. We organize a lot of network events together with our members. And most members are small and medium business-sized businesses, medium-sized businesses. And there are a lot of them are currently growing and becoming more professional, larger companies related to, for example, fuel cell manufacturing. Okay, the Netherlands. Probably you know the Netherlands, and I couldn't resist to place a Guus on this page because he played a good role for Korea. And of course, we know Vincent van Gogh, we know the Dutch cheese from Gouda, and the fields with tulips, and of course, Amsterdam with the canals. But I think the left picture is more important, that you can see that the Netherlands is a small country. It's placed in the middle of Europe, and it has a lot of shore, and that gives possibilities for example, wind energy, offshore wind energy, and of course we have the harbor in Rotterdam, which can be of interest for the new ammonia economy. The Dutch roadmap for hydrogen is updated this year. As you can see, there's a huge document of over 40 pages, which I will not read here for you. You can look it up if you want. But mainly there are 6 topics in it. The first topic is the production and the import and the usage of hydrogen. The second is the import and use of hydrogen derivatives like ammonia. The third topic is hydrogen mobility. We think that hydrogen is mainly at this moment important for the heavy-duty industry and probably also for the flying. The fourth is the prevention of net congestion in the grid, in the electricity grid. I think the Netherlands needs some explanation. We used to have all the natural gas from Groningen. In the Netherlands, we had our own natural gas. And therefore, we used it to heat our houses and to cook, and it's used a lot in the industry. And the electricity grid is not that heavy. And this means that if you want to convert everything to electricity, you get a lot of net congestion, and that asks for smart solutions, decentralized, not only centralized hydrogen production, for example, but also the decentralized part. And I see that in Poland it is probably the same. Yeah. The fifth point is the development of technology clusters. That Netherlands is like Korea, a technology-driven country, and we want to also be involved in technology, in the hydrogen technology development. And the sixth is the human capital agenda. I want to show 4 examples in the hydrogen industry related to this. And the first example is the offshore hydrogen production. If you have offshore wind, you can transport the electricity with cables to the land. But probably it's a better approach to bring it to the land in a gaseous way, so like in hydrogen, that you place the electrolyzer offshore. But this means that you need a new approach to develop these electrolyzers, because maintenance offshore is a problem. So it has to be very reliable. You need to develop very reliable systems that needs no or not many maintenance. The second is that, as I said, we had the natural gas in the Netherlands, that we still have, but we are looking to reuse all the infrastructure that is meant to use for natural gas if we can use it for hydrogen. The idea is that 25% of the grid, there are mainly 4 pipes everywhere, that one of the 4 pipes is transformed to hydrogen. And at this moment, already 1,000 kilometers of hydrogen pipelines are there in the Netherlands, but the goal is to have it everywhere. The third example is the example of the mobility. What we see is that there are a lot of companies in the mobility sector and transport sector are looking for hydrogen as alternative for diesel, because electrical transport is not an option for a lot of cases. In the Netherlands, we at this moment have 12 refueling stations which are public and which are also for personal cars, and another 12 are planned or already in progress to realize. The fourth example is the hydrogen storage. You can produce hydrogen, you can transport it, but you have to store it. And of course you can make ammonia of it, but if you have to store it within a country, you can also look to new possibilities. And one of the possibilities is that in the Netherlands we also have a large salt industry. And if you get salt out of the ground, you leave a cavity, underground cavities, which can probably be reused to store hydrogen. And I think this page is the most important one because it tells what the situation in the Netherlands is. We already produce a lot of hydrogen, but this is not green hydrogen, it is gray or blue hydrogen. And the second picture is that we want to realize 4 gigawatts of electrolyzer capacity in the Netherlands in 2030. The third picture is that we want to realize 20 gigawatts of wind power, offshore wind power, only the offshore part. We also have onshore wind in 2030. And the fourth picture shows you the pipelines that they were used for natural gas, that we want to reuse it for hydrogen. So there's 136,000 kilometers of natural gas pipelines in the Netherlands, and it would be nice if we can reuse them. So there are plans for that. And as I already said, Netherlands is in the heart of Europe, and that means that there are a lot of possibilities for our future. Okay, how does the government help the industry? There are a lot of incentives and initiatives and subsidies, which I will not all name and explain, but it is not in the million euro range, but it's in the billion euro range, what is available to invest in the hydrogen industry in the Netherlands. And with that, I come to my last slide. Maybe you have heard that in the Netherlands there is a second hydrogen association. It is founded this year. The name is NL Hydrogen, and where the NWBA has a lot of members in the small and medium-sized businesses, NL Hydrogen has mainly large companies in the oil and gas industry and the national energy distributors. And they work together to have more influence and impact on the government to speed up the green hydrogen production. And I think it is not a threat for us. It is nice that we have such a second association which has a lot of money to make this happen. And we cooperate a lot together. So this was my last slide, and I want to thank you all for your attention.
네, 발표 고맙습니다. 네덜란드 수소 산업에 대해서 들어봤습니다. 자, 다음은 오늘 마지막 발표인데요. 싱가포르입니다. HFCAS Executive Director이신 Tessa Teng님께서 Singapore's National Hydrogen Strategy Preparing Singapore for Hydrogen Future라는 주제로 발표에 수고해 주시겠습니다. 박수 부탁드립니다.
Hello. Yeah. Oh, it's I guess it's very nervous to be speaking as the first speaker, but it's also very nervous to be the last speaker because everybody's already drained with a lot of good presentations, and then I'll just need your final 5% of attention before we can all go for off work and have our lunch, right? So, okay, just a quick introduction about myself. My name is Tessa, and then I'm the Executive Director from the Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Associations of Singapore. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, President Mr. Moon, for having all of us here in Korea again. Okay, so today I'll be sharing with you the Singapore's National Hydrogen Strategy, which was released last October by the Ministry of Trade and Industry in Singapore. So, paperwork is very important to Singapore if you don't know us well, okay? In Singapore English, we call it confirm and chop before we can proceed to actions. So maybe it's a little bit different from other scenarios in other countries. Yeah, but for Singapore, paperwork is very, very necessary to us. Okay. Oh, sorry, I forgot to do this. Okay, so a quick introduction about ourselves. So the Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Association of Singapore, or in short, HFCAS, was officially registered in 2019. So similar to other associations, we also serve as a platform for networking, knowledge sharing, and also to foster collaboration opportunities. Okay, so before I dive into this subject, right, I would actually like to give you all a quick background about how Singapore's commitment into net zero by 2050. So if you don't know about Singapore, let me give you a quick comparison. Singapore has a total land area of 734.3 square kilometers. It is just 20% larger than the Seoul city. So comparison. Okay, because of these land limitations, so for Singapore, we actually study the import of hydrogen and its also and its end-use applications very cautiously. Yeah, because it is not possible for us to do trial and error in every piece of the land. But after a few years of study, Singapore now recognizes the low-carbon hydrogen as a promising, broad-based and scalable decarbonization pathway for the nation, which also can add on to our energy security and resilience, which also mentioned multiple times by our fellow members here. Okay, so I would say that the National Hydrogen Strategy for Singapore, it's a lot depending on the ideology at this stage. So there is a lot of theory that will be translated into actions later. But in the first stage, we actually identify a few key sectors for Singapore that could fully utilize hydrogen as a way to decarbonize the nation. So the first sector would be power generation, also similar to many member countries. So the power sector currently accounts for 40% of our carbon emissions, and 95% of our electricity is actually powered by natural gas. And we see this will continue in the medium to long term as a transition fuel. And hydrogen would be having a potential to decarbonize our power sector by 50% of the energy mix by 2050, which is carved under the National Hydrogen Strategy. And then the next one will be the manufacturing sector and also the industrial sector. It is by far the largest contributor for our carbon emissions, around 44% as of 2020. So some of you may know about Jurong Island, which is a very centralized key industrial zone for the energy and chemical sector in Singapore. So the low carbon hydrogen can actually be used as a feedstock for industrial processes and fuel for heat, power, and steam generation. And then the next I will talk about as the maritime sector. So maritime sector is a very key sector for Singapore because we are also one of the world's largest bunkering hub, supplying close to 50 million tons of marine bunker fuel to vessels that ply the international shipping routes in 2021. So the industrial outlook for maritime sector is that it will be a multi-fuel transition, with oil progressively being replaced by a lower carbon fuel such as LNG and in near term. And at the same time, the maritime sector also developed quickly into other low carbon fuels such as ammonia and also e-methanol. And to accelerate this transition, a Global Center for Maritime Decarbonization, GCMD, was partially funded by MPA in Singapore, established in 2021, in order to help the maritime industry to faster leapfrog into a low-carbon transition. Okay, last but not least, Singapore is not only a maritime hub and also an air hub. So Singapore is preparing for a low-carbon future for the aviation sector. In near term, hydrogen can support the production of sustainable aviation fuels, and in the medium term, we will be exploring the hydrogen fuel cells for the ground support vehicles. And in longer term, the liquefied hydrogen could be a potential fuel source depending on how the aviation sector progresses. And I think something very different from all our members' countries here is about Singapore's strategy on the electrification of the vehicles. So unlike other countries that are also promoting FCEV alongside with battery vehicles, Singapore's current focus is on the electrification on the vehicle fleet. Okay, because of the Singapore limitation on land, so actually to transfer from east to west, it's not more than like 50 or 60 kilometers. That's why it actually makes sense that Singapore's focusing on the EV deployment, while at the same time we are also keeping our focus on how the world progress with the heavy-duty vehicles. Okay, so this is also another key portion of the National Hydrogen Strategy. Singapore will organize our efforts around the 5 key thrusts. So to summarize these 5 key thrusts, we will focus on the seeding pathfinder projects in order to build up the capabilities of our regulatory agencies, industries, and workforce, and also to undertake long-term infrastructure and land planning so that we are prepared to scale up the deployment in later. We will also invest in research and innovation in order to solve key technological bottlenecks that are critical to Singapore, and also to facilitate the commercialization of these research outcomes. Now let's talk a little bit more about each of these key thrusts. So I'll quickly run through. The first is on the Pathfinder projects. So very similar to other member countries as a first baby step, we will also look into some of the trials and also some of the expression of interest that's being launched by our government agencies. So the key objectives is to look at the low or zero carbon ammonia power generation and bunkering, which I emphasized earlier on. Even though during these 2 days forum, we haven't talked a lot about ammonia, but ammonia will be one of the key energy carrier to Singapore because of the development of the maritime sector. So we welcome all the discussions and also proposals from the member countries about the ammonia production and export. Okay, so the target is to achieve at least 50 megawatts of power generation and 0.1 million tons per annum for the marine bunkering by 2027. This is the objective of the expression of interest. So as a start, we will start to build up the capabilities to import, handle, and utilize all this low carbon ammonia. Oops, did I skip a slide? Okay, so these are some of the Pathfinder projects that are being announced, mainly surrounding the power generation, and then the trial on the fuel cell light commercial vehicles, and also the hydrogen import and distribution projects, as well as import of ammonia, which is very critical for Singapore. So as a small nation, even though we do not have a lot of capacity on the manufacturing of heavy equipments, but Singapore has a very robust system on the R&D sector. So give you an example, Singapore's largest research institutions, A*STAR, which is staffed with 5,000 employees. So as a small nation with around 6 million population, it's actually a very good number. This is actually exclude all the other institute of higher learnings. So we believe that we can also play a part in the R&D sectors for the hydrogen industry, mainly on the component or the material levels. So we also welcome collaborations. So in order to support all these initiatives, Singapore government also launched 2 phases of the ELSA funding initiatives. The first phase was launched in 2021, and then the second phase will be announced soon. So you can see that the focus will be a lot on the hydrogen infrastructures and also the end-use utilization. And then the third point, it will be about international collaboration. So also mentioned by a lot of the member countries here, we actually need to work on development of the guarantee of origin certifications methodologies, which is also very critical to import countries like Singapore, because we're likely to be a net importer. And it's very important for us to understand that how those calculations being done, and then how to categorize like different way of the production for the hydrogen. And also mentioned just now in the beginning slides, so Singapore actually has to plan very carefully for our long-term land and infrastructure, because for Singapore, once you put on the infrastructure over there, you likely cannot remove it in the next 20 to 30 years. Yeah, so in order to do it in a careful manner, so we always have to do some small-scale trial in the beginning to understand that what will be the technology required and also the resources required before we can move into a larger scale-up projects. And then finally, also mentioned by a lot of member countries, so the human capital is actually a very important subject, as well as for Singapore, because we're likely to see that there's a lot of work that has to be transit from the traditional oil and gas sectors or chemical sectors into the renewable energy sectors in the future. So the government will work with the industry, unions, and education sector to support the workforce development and to equip Singaporeans with the skill and knowledge that's required for the new hydrogen economy. So, summary, okay, Singapore is actually very different economy comparing to the rest of the member countries where you focus a lot on the upstream production projects. Because Singapore as a net importer, we focus a lot on the midterm the midstream and also downstream applications. Yeah, so for Singapore, we as a maritime hub and aviation hub, we will also pay attention to how the technology has developed across the globe, and also to the development of the different energy carrier, which is actually quite critical, because at this stage, we see more development on the ammonia applications, bunkering, and also transportations, while in the future, we will also see other energy carriers like liquid hydrogen, and also liquefied hydrogen, and also even solid state hydrogen that will be coming up. Yeah, so we again welcome all fellow members to discuss with us about how's your development of the different kind of the energy carrier, and then for Singapore's assessment. Yeah, so for HFCAS, in order to support all these initiatives, we will work on a few points as mentioned here. So first, we will continue to build up a comprehensive ecosystem within the Singapore landscape. And then we will also deepen our relationships with the counterparts in the overseas. As the last one will be quite critical to us in the next few years, that we will launch an exercise to work on the hydrogen industry implementation roadmap. So that we hope that by the launch of this roadmap, we will help to advise and also inform our government as well as the industry players in Singapore about what will be the challenges and also opportunities in different parts of the value chain. Yeah, with that, I'll end my presentation and let's go for lunch. Thank you very much.
네, 발표 고맙습니다. 테서 특님의 발표를 마지막으로 오늘 포럼의 모든 순서를 마치겠습니다. 각국 수소산업 현황에 대해서 발표를 준비해 주신 지하 회원국 여러분들께 감사드리겠고요. 또 끝까지 함께 경청해 주신 참가자 여러분들께도 감사드립니다. 잠시 후 이곳 204호 1시 50분부터 H2Meet 컨퍼런스 2023 리더스 서밋이 시작이 되겠습니다. 계속해서 많은 관심과 참여를 부탁드리겠고요. 지하 회원국 여러분들께서는 308호에 점심 식사 준비되어 있습니다. 지금 308호로 이동해 주시면 되겠습니다. 즐거운 점심 식사 시간 되시고요. 함께 해주신 여러분 고맙습니다. 네, 지하 회원국 여러분들께서는 308호로 이동을 하시면 되겠고요. 지금 스크린에 보이는 QR코드는 발표집 자료를 다운받으실 수 있습니다. So the QR code that you're now the showing on the screen is for the presentation material. So for those of you who wish to download the presentation material, please scan that QR code. Thank you and enjoy your lunch.